want to thank Chairman Ice and Ranking Member Johnson for holding this important hearing on copyright issues, and to you, registered promoter, for being here today and for your hard work and leadership. I also want to align myself with the comments of Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren in terms of the Music Modernization Act, which is coming up on the 5-year anniversary. I was proud to have been a co-sponsor of the act. The MMA transformed the way songwriters, music publishers, and tech platforms operate under streaming models. The creation of the Mechanical License Collective has streamlined the administration, collection, and distribution of mechanical royalties. To date, it has paid out more than $1.3 billion to songwriters and publishers. And as co-chair of the Songwriters Caucus, I want to thank you and your entire team for continuing to work with the MLC in meeting its mandate to serve songwriters and ensure that they are compensated. So I know you've answered a number of questions on fair use. I just want to understand, you're currently investigating the issue of whether it constitutes essentially fair use if a large language AI model trains itself on copyrighted works. Is that correct?
Yes, it's part of the questions in our notice of inquiry, and of course it also will depend on the exact circumstances. So not every use and training will be the same for fair use purposes.
When do you expect that to be completed?
Well, that will be part of our report or reports coming out of the NOI, so as early as possible in 2024.
Okay, and as part of your investigation, it's not only whether a large language model, let's say it trains itself on copyrighted Taylor Swift songs, but also you're looking at if it outputs lyrics in the style of Taylor Swift songs. You're looking at whether that's fair use as well.
Yes, and of course it will also be, whatever we say in our report will also be informed by any court decisions that have come out by that point in time in the cases that have been brought.
And you've also said that essentially perhaps there should be essentially a federal right for voice recordings, because right now audio is not copyrighted, correct?
The style or sound of a voice is not protected by copyright.
And your office had issued a report basically suggesting that there should be some sort of federal name, image, and likeness law.
We recommended that Congress consider that, yes.
And that report laid out essentially a proposal that was around the same level as what California's protections are. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if I would say it was the same level. It contained it talked about the elements of that legislation in California. And of course, the report came out before we had the generative AI that we have today. So any legislation would need to take into account what the current capabilities and contexts are.
All right, thank you. In March of this year, your office basically announced that a work that involves, quote, sufficient human authorship, end quote, can be copyrightable. So let's say someone uses AI to write a song of which over half the lyrics are written by AI. Would that constitute sufficient human authorship? How do you determine what that means?
I wouldn't impose any strict percentage or numerical limit. So less than half could be sufficient human authorship. It's really decided on a case-by-case basis. I find it very useful to think of this by analogizing it to a human and human situation. So for example, if two people collaborated in writing a song, did each of them contribute enough authorship to make them a co-author of the song? And if the answer is yes, in that context, then it should be the same in the AI context.
And ultimately for this, you're just gonna have to rely on trust, right? That someone actually discloses they use AI to help them with whatever creative work they're trying to copyright.
Yes, but that's true of all applications we receive. Applicants have to certify that what they're saying is truthful. It's a government document. There are penalties for false statements. And of course, you could risk losing your registration.
And do you view AI software as different than other kinds of software that creators have been using for decades to make their creations better?
That's a good question. I think what we're seeing with the new generative AI in the last 9 months or so does seem to be different, not just in speed, but in kind from the technologies that were used before. I think in the past, AI was used more as a tool, and now what we see is that it's generating content that if it were generated by a human being would be protected by copyright. So I think we've moved to a somewhat different world than we were in before.
Thank you. I yield back.